It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Thanks for joining me on The Sam Lesante Show, folks. Tell you a little story. Gary Labanoski was a healthy 20-something when suddenly he was faced with the sudden onset of type 1 diabetes. Then years later, he is told he needs a kidney transplant. This is the story of Gary's struggle to try to live a normal life with his wife and kidney donor, Lois, by his side, and how he was made to fight every step of the way. After the transplant fails, a series of unfortunate setbacks follow Gary as he goes through more operation, kidney dialysis, and even a car accident. Lois is there as a caretaker, cheerleader, and the one who has to pick up the pieces in the end. Gary and Lois's story is a reassurance that there are others who are going through their own personal disasters and misfortunes just like you. You are not alone. That's the subject of our show today. The title of the book is called Gary's Fight, the story of a failed transplant. And I have Lois Labanoski here on the show. Lois, thanks for coming on the show. This book, we talked about it. It's interesting, but it's more of a support type book for people who have been going through that. So what's the purpose of the book?
Well, I wrote the book first foremost as a tribute to my husband, but also I wanted to help people who are going through something similar. They're going through maybe some kind of a medical problem and it's not working out the way they thought it was going to. I had done some research before I had gotten here, and 93% of kidney transplants are successful after 3 years. In fact, after 10 years, over 50% are still successful. So when you're in that other percentage, you get to feel pretty much alone. And so I wrote the book for people who are in those percentages where it was supposed to work out and just didn't.
Okay, so the book had a purpose of helping support these people who have gone through some of those things, okay? Now, what was the beginning of the problem?
Well, the beginning of the problem happened way back in 1975 when Gary was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Was he having problems?
He had a very high fever. It was the first year of our marriage. He had a very high fever, which he was prone to, and apparently it went so high that it burned out his pancreatic cells, because there really wasn't anybody else in his family that we knew of that had diabetes. And was showing some of the signs like excessive thirst and had to run to the bathroom all the time, and eventually was diagnosed and lived over 25 years with diabetes, having to give himself a shot. And
so he lived 25 years after he was diagnosed in 75.
Well, after 75, there was 25 years before he had a kidney problem showing up. And everything was fine. He took care of the diabetes, and then one day he was at work and he had this terrible pain in the location of the kidney. He came home from work. We thought it was kidney stones. It sounded just like all the stories we heard from anybody who had kidney stones, and ended up going up to the hospital and thinking he's waiting to pass a kidney stone. They take, of course, blood tests and things like that, and all of a sudden the tests came back that he was in end-stage renal failure and needed either to go on dialysis or to get a transplant, and we were shocked.
Wow. And so at that particular point in time, so he needed a kidney, all right?
He either needed a kidney or go on dialysis.
Right.
That was
so
the choices.
What happens then?
Well, what we ended up doing was we had looked around for where we wanted to affiliate with as far as kidney transplant, and decided on...
what is that? Okay, there's a process that you go through?
You have to go through a process, and we decided to go with Penn State Hershey.
Okay.
And went down there and got in their program. they talk to us about it and tell us, what's involved, but the person has to be cleared first that he's healthy enough to have such an operation. So he had to go through all of that testing and establish a baseline for the different markers that they look for. And then in the process, I had decided I'm going to test to see if I'll be a donor. And once he was established that yes, he was would be able to be a viable candidate for kidney transplant.
Now this is 2000 then, right?
This is 2002.
2002. Okay, so he's how old at that time?
He's about 49 years old.
49, okay. All right, so then you decide that you want to be a kidney donor. Okay, so what did you have to go through?
Well, after his markers were established, I went through the whole process too. They give you neurological testing, they give you different blood tests, and then there's something that's called an antigen. They test for these antigens, and you have to match. And I matched to one antigen, which is, even though it's not a lot of the antigens, I think there was 6. They have had successful transplants with one antigen. So I was found that I would be a viable candidate to be a donor for him.
Okay, so tell me then, once you decided you wanted to give the kidney, okay, let's talk about the operation day. How'd that go?
Well, the operation day.
Were you nervous? Oh, stupid question.
Yeah, no,
Were
you were, but we were. I was always trying to be positive.
Yeah.
My husband was more nervous than I was.
Passed out. I mean, so God bless. Women, I always say women are the strongest people. Men are big babies, particularly this guy right here. But I'm sure there had to be apprehension and everything.
There was a lot, my husband used to always say, "I don't have a good feeling about this. I just don't have a good feeling about this."
He was saying that.
He was saying that all along, and I was trying to be positive and saying, it's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Everything, will
Well, the
come out
doctors
okay.
would have never done the operation.
No, they wouldn't have done it if there wasn't any problem with it. But he just, that kind of apprehension you're talking about. You just have this, it's not going to work out.
My wife would have to drag me in there. Okay, so tell me about that operation day. How was that?
Well, we had gone there the day before. I actually stayed in a hotel. We stayed in a hotel overnight, and took taxi over in the early morning, and you go up, and they get you all ready. And what they were doing is they got me ready first, because I'm the one who's giving the kidney. I will have the first operation. So
Did they explain the entire operation?
They explain the entire operation. They explain in the whole process of vetting me for being a donor, they take you in, they sit you down by yourself. Are you doing this of your own volition? Are you they make sure that everything's on the up and up and everything, and they explain everything to you. They give you videos to watch about the importance of donation. I always said we watched those videos and had these wonderful the mother giving to her husband, or to her son, or a father giving to a daughter, or a spouse giving to another spouse, and everything was wonderful. And I said our story would have ended up on the cutting room floor because it was not the one that everybody else had.
Okay, so when you had was the operation when they removed the kidney and put it in Gary, was it a success at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I came out of it first, and they took me up to a room, and I was fine. Of course, you have your pain and everything from being operated on, but I had come out of it. Went in to see Gary because they put us in separate rooms, but we were on the same floor, and had the nurse wheel me over to see him, and he was groggy, but he was coming out of it too. But they said nothing kicked in yet, but that was to be expected because a lot of times it doesn't. It takes a little while before a kidney kicks in. They waited. Nothing happened that day. I actually, the operation was on a Tuesday, and they let me go on a Thursday. And one of my girlfriends came down and stayed overnight with me, stayed at a hotel again, and then on Friday he was supposed to be let out. And instead I get a phone call from him that they're opening me up again because they want to see why the kidney isn't working.
Okay.
So there I am on Friday thinking he's going to be coming home, and now he's going in for another operation. So, it was like one thing after another. So we had to wait there until
What did they find when they went back in?
they found that there was nothing wrong with the kidney yet, that was still possible that it might work. And they gave him a shot of a very heavy-duty immunosuppressant called OKT3. And they closed it back up again and sent him back to his room. But that in itself proved to be problematic. I left that Friday. My son had come and had taken me home, and we were going back Saturday, and we get a phone call Saturday morning, and it's Gary, and he's not sounding very well at all, and I could hear the struggle. He couldn't breathe.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, hang up, go call the nurse, push the button for the nurse. And so he, hung up the phone. I called back and got the nurse's station on that floor. And I said, I was just on with my husband. He's not breathing, not breathing well. He's supposed to be calling the nurse. And she said, well, his nurse is in with him right now. And I said, well, we're on our way, but it's going to take us about an hour to get there. But we're going to be there. So it was a very scary situation. When we got to the hospital, I went to his room, and nothing was there of his. He was gone. I think he had his clothes, like his suitcase and everything that was there. That was gone. The name was off the.
Oh.
The name was off the.
Oh my God.
It was like
Oh my God.
It was like he was erased. I thank God for my son. I was flipping
happened?
out.
Hold that thought.
Well, okay.
Hold that thought. We're talking to Lois Labanoski. Okay, her husband passed away from failed kidney transplant. So, but the story is exciting. But this book-based project, she said, is for people like you or people who are going through some struggles. Sometimes operations don't go the way you plan. I'm sure they all try their best, but it's a book that really gives you encouragement. Now, you can get the book at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, or booklocker.com, and itunes.apple.com. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show. Folks, remember 24/7, you can watch all of our shows on ssptv.com. My email is sam@ssptv.com. And for those people who have friends in Pottsville, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and the area, in Pottsville, channel 190, Monday through Friday, every day of the week, we're on one of our local shows. In Mountaintop and Wilkes-Barre and Kingston, channel 92, cable channel 92, Saturday and Sunday evenings. And in Lackawanna County, channel 190, we're on Sunday and Saturday and Sunday mornings. But most importantly, folks, download our app, Google Play or App Store, SSP TV. All of the shows we produce are here, plus live streaming. So if you have friends or family anywhere in the country and the world, you could call them and say, hey, look, Lois Labanoski is on the Sam Lesante Show talking about Gary's fight. And that's the story today. We're talking about the book, Gary's Fight, the story of a failed transplant. And Lois Labanoski, who was his wife, donated a kidney. Now, you get to the hospital, you go up there to his room, okay, and you see no suitcase, the name is off the door, he's not there. I would have been dead, probably died of a heart attack if it would have been me, if, whatever, loved one there. So what happened?
Like I said, I was just very nervous about the whole thing. I didn't know what had happened. Your mind goes all different ways trying to think what's going on. My son, thank goodness he was there. He was very calming. We were waiting at the nurse's station. There was nobody there. The nurses were busy in a different area. And then finally somebody came up, and I said, my husband was in that room. He was having trouble breathing. I don't know where he is now. I don't see his name on it. And I guess the person who was there, the nurse, had just come on duty. So they didn't really know anything, and they weren't able to really tell me anything. And you were
They weren't able to tell you
They
anything.
weren't really able to tell me anything, but in a very quick amount of time, a woman, another nurse, came out of a door that was on the side, and she took one look at me, and she said, "Are you Lois?" And I said, "Yes," and she was Gary's nurse.
Okay.
And she said, "Follow me." And then, so we followed her, thank goodness, because we mazed through the whole area of the hospital there. And while she was taking us, she explained that Gary had gone into respiratory arrest and had to be moved to like an ICU unit to, bring him back, and because he, was pretty much gone and until they were able to get the breathing going again.
What caused that?
He turned out to have an allergic reaction to the OKT3, which is that powerful immunosuppressant that they had given him in the operation the day before. And there was no way to know that you're allergic to something like that, because that's the only time you would use something like that.
Wow.
And that's how his body reacted to it. They had to.
So you were able to go and see him?
We were able to go and see him. He was still being prepped. Basically, just had like the sheet drawn over him. He was incubated, so he had the tube in and everything, so you couldn't really talk to him. And it was wonderful to see him, but he did not look good at all. It just threw us for a loop. But
Is this like a couple days after?
this is like, yeah, we had the operation on Tuesday, had the second operation on Friday, and this is now Saturday.
Wow. How were you feeling?
I didn't have time to recuperate. I
Okay,
just
you-
had
you
to
just-
keep
you
going.
just kept going, that's
I
it.
just kept going. I just had a major operation.
So
but,
Gary's there, and so what happens then?
well, they said everything was okay for now, and they were taking him to a different area of the hospital, a special room where they would be monitored, like an ICU unit kind of thing. And so we followed him there, and that he was going to be there and be monitored, for a while.
So what was the outcome then?
The outcome was I think like the next day they took the tube out, and he was glad because that was so uncomfortable, and then was able to talk to us, and basically had to fight his way from there. And it's one of the reasons I call that Gary's fight. It was one thing after another.
So
Like that. That
did
was
they
a big
did they
fight.
have to did they have to remove the kidney then?
They didn't remove it then.
Okay.
They still had been viable when they looked at it on Friday.
But was it working?
Wasn't working.
Okay. So it never worked.
Never worked.
Okay. How long was it in there before
They kept it in for a month.
a month? Hoping that it would kick in? Is that what they were
Right.
saying? Okay. And so it never worked.
Never
So
worked.
did he have to do dialysis?
They put a port in for him to start on dialysis, and and then had to educate us on the whole dialysis thing too, because there's two different ways you can do, actually three, but one is hemodialysis, which is the blood dialysis, and you generally go to a center and have the dialysis done like 3 times a week. And the toxins are coming in and out of your blood.
yeah.
And then there's also peritoneal dialysis, which you can do at home. And they give you a machine and they instruct you, and you basically do that through your peritoneal cavity, and you're putting liquids in there that you're holding in for the day, and then at night you dialyze.
How long did he have to do these go through the dialysis before they decided to take the kidney back out?
Well, even with taking the kidney back out, you still need dialysis.
Yeah, I understand
because,
that. So, but how long
So
was it before they took the kidney out then? When they decided
They-
it wasn't doing anything
Well,
anymore?
it was 1 month.
1 month.
One
So they
month.
had to take the kidney out.
They
Okay.
took it,
So
and
he's-
that actually was a surprise to us too, because they hadn't taken it out up to that point. And at this point in time, I taught school, so I went back to school. It was first week of school, so I went back to teaching, and my father took him for his appointment down in Hershey, and we just expected, to let us know what was going on. Well, I get a phone call that they're removing the kidney, and I had to go down there then, and we were pretty much of a mess because it sort of just ended any kind of hope we had that kidney was going to work.
When they took the kidney, and the reason what was the well, of course it's not working, but I mean, did they give you any medical things that could have gone haywire?
No, and they did prepare you that, there are things that can go wrong. Sometimes it just doesn't work through no fault of anybody. It just, in fact, people have kidneys that do work for a while and then stop. So that can happen also.
So then what happened after, they took the kidney out? How long would Gary have to, we're talking about Gary's fight here. Okay.
Right, so he had to stay in the hospital for a while. They did have the port in, he did the dialysis. He actually, I took turns between staying at home and coming down, and also having a hotel down there and coming in. And I remember getting a phone call. I was down at the one hotel, and he called, and he said, "You got to come." He goes, "You got to help me." This is early in the morning. "I want to get ready." He said, I want to see if I can walk. I got to get out of here.
Folks, I'm talking to Lois Labanoski. The book is Gary's Fight, the story of a failed transplant. Interesting book, folks, particularly if people, unfortunately, sometimes have an operation that doesn't go the way it should be. This book is comforting for you. You can buy the book at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, booklocker.com, and itunes.apple.com. We come back. Was there a possibility for another transplant? Stay with us. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. SSPTV.com, all of our shows, and also download our app. Go to Google Play, SSP TV, and get every one of our shows, and live streaming as well. My guest is Lois Labanoski. Her husband died, failed kidney transplant, but the book is called Gary's Fight. And okay, so now you're going in there. Was there a possibility of another transplant?
Well, when all this was happening, I mean, he went through operations. There's a few other operations that ended up coming in between this, and so he didn't really want to talk about a transplant at this point because he still didn't really feel that good, knowing somewhere in the future there may be a possibility. But the night before he died, we had to go to.
How long was it, Lois? Not to interrupt you, but how long was it after he had the transplant that he passed away? How
4
long?
years.
4 years. Yeah. So he was going through struggles those 4 years.
Right.
That's where we got Gary's Fight.
Right. And there were different struggles.
Oh,
and then
God.
Right before he died, he said, "Okay, I think maybe we can talk about a transplant again." So, and he would have needed a heart operation to correct a valve problem before he did the transplant.
How old was he?
He was 54.
Yeah, there's pictures on here. I remember. Okay, I didn't know him well, but when you showed me the picture, I know he was a handsome guy. Okay, and very nice person. I mean, from what I recall, I didn't know him very, personally, etc. But sometimes, comfort teams are, I think, very important. When people are sick, you need comfort. You need people to support you. Okay, and I think this book is a support. For some people, sometimes they're alone. They don't have friends and family to work with them and be with them and pray with them and do all that stuff. And I'm sure Gary was fortunate to that degree. He had the love of his family. Am I correct in saying that?
Oh, absolutely. But you do feel, like nobody else is going through these kinds of things. And so when you read something like this, hopefully people will feel like, there's other people that are going through this.
As my wife and I were, sometimes you hear news of different people and you just wonder, there's shocking news, and then Debbie's there as much as she can, either to helping or sending a mass card or whatever, People, I think that's very important, and I think prayer is extremely important, in those matters. But you went through a challenge, okay?
Yes.
It took a lot of courage to write the book. I'm sure I didn't see any tears in this book, but I'm sure the paper, I'm sure the paper that you wrote it on had to be a lot of tears, because to write something like this takes a lot of guts, okay? Like I said, women are strong. God bless you, women. I wouldn't want to be a woman, I'll tell you that right now, because I'm a big baby and men are big babies. But you know, you did a wonderful job teaching. I understand you're going to enjoy yourself, hopefully enjoy your family. I wish you the best, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Folks,
Thank
get
you so
the book,
much.
Gary's Fight, the story of a failed transplant, folks. You can get it at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, booklocker.com, or itunes.apple.com. We'll see you next time.